Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. This music in the background, not too loud, not too soft. Welcome back. Been a few days since I podcasted. Surprisingly enough, my last podcast didn't get any sort of attention from the YouTube censors, despite talking about a lot of the same things that I mentioned in the one that they summarily deleted. So who knows what their algorithm is. At any rate, today's topic, let's start by introducing a few things. The background music, if you're wondering, is Sibelius, Fifth Symphony, one of my favorites. The artwork behind you is what the Art AI gave me when I asked it to show me fish baptizing gods. Interesting ideas it came up with. I don't know. Take a fair amount of study to know what it was getting at with some of these pictures, but you can peruse them and use them and see what they give to you while I talk. Okay, today's talk is going to be about baptism. In fact, I'm going to title this one, What's Up with Baptism? The Truth About John the Baptist and the Real Fisherman Jesus. Okay, baptism is one of the sacraments of Christianity. Some versions of Christianity are very heavily focused on baptism. There's a whole sect called the Baptists who make baptism a key part of their faith. Now, what's up with that? Now, people will tell you that baptism is an extension of Jewish ritual washing practices and is a symbolic cleaning of your soul to make you a better person, or to show that you want to be a better person, or whatever, nonsense that they give you to justify it. I'm telling you that is nonsense. I'm going to tell you where the idea of baptism came from, why it's an important part of spirituality, and how it ties into the Bible in ways that you may not be aware of yet. Okay, so let's talk about baptism. Now, what is baptism? In some churches, they just splash a little water on the forehead of the baby or whoever's being baptized and call it good. There are other groups that do full immersion baptism. In fact, sometimes kind of scary baptism. Well, let me tell you where this all really originated and what its real tie to spirituality is. One of the most common ways to almost die is to nearly drown. If you know anybody who's drowned or nearly drowned, you can live for approximately 3 or 4, maybe as many as 10 minutes with your lungs completely full of water and not taking in any air. This is, in fact, historically, one of the most common ways to experience a near-death experience. And if you have listened to any of my talks on near-death experiences and other altered state experiences, you will know that these are times when your body turns on its interface to the spiritual world. The pineal gland is that interface to the multiverse of other universes. It can connect you with visions, sounds, a whole virtual reality elsewhere, depending on how activated it is and who's wanting to have a conversation with you. Now, my contention, my belief, I'm almost certain of it in fact, is that the origin of the mission of John the Baptist, he was called John the Baptist because baptism was a very, very important piece of his ministry. He used to baptize people in a river, and it was some serious baptism. Where did that come from? Versus, just ritually washing yourself in a little basin, which we found these basins in and around Jewish settlements, Jewish temples, and so forth. There is that aspect of a ritual cleansing. That's not the same as baptism. At least it's maybe bastardization of the water ceremony, the water ritual. And my contention is also that many of the mystery cults involved baptism. This is why water is and always has been such a spiritual substance. So what I believe happened back then, and the reason why there is no credible evidence for a real historical Jesus, is that the actual Jesus was a fisherman. A fisherman who had a near-death experience and came back and started talking about messianic figure that he'd seen coming. This is not too different than previous prophets that the Bible mentions, who had these visions of a coming Messiah. The Old Testament is full of discussions of Messiah. The Jews have their Messiah, the Muslims have their Messiah. We'll talk all about all of them. This fisherman, maybe many fishermen who might have been on the same boat and survived. It was very common for shipwrecks to occur in the Mediterranean in that age. And this ties into my previous podcast about the truth behind the Christian Messiah, that I believe that this new religion was centered around fishermen and trading families who knew these fishermen and heard their stories and were linked to the priestly. No, sorry, my nephew is being annoying. Were linked together through their connection with the sea. Maybe on a voyage, a trader and some Roman officials were traveling with some fishermen, had a shipwreck, and many survived, and some of them had interesting near-death experience stories to tell and compare and gather together, and felt that their survival of a few people off this shipwreck was somehow something special, especially with the prophetic messages that some of the survivors brought back from their near-death experiences. Some of these folks on this shipwreck had connections to the priestly family that produced John the Baptist, He was part of the priestly caste, and if you know anything about the Jewish traditions, there were only certain tribes that were normally intended to be priests. It was kind of similar to the caste system of India. The Levites, I believe, are the tribe that were supposed to be the priests. At any rate, there's also another family that's connected with this story. As I mentioned in the earlier podcast, that is the family of Herod and his descendants, Herod Agrippa and his daughter Berenice, who ended up being the sweetheart of the future emperor Titus, the son of Vespasian, whose father was a tax collector and who himself was a trader in or dealer in mules. Vespasian became the most famed mule breeder and caravan organizer in Rome, and would have had contacts through his father, who had been a tax collector in Asia province. Maybe all tied together to this shipwreck and to this mystery sailor who gave them all of the new ideas that went into the Christian story, the Jesus story. Perhaps all of the folks who heard this prophecy thought of it in their own way, and perhaps John the Baptist and his followers, which maybe even included that original, or some of those original fishermen who had these near-death experiences and come back with this idea of a coming Messiah, they were planning something like that. Some of the events that are described as going to happen to this Christ figure. The other family that got wind of it, or families, were Herod's family, and the family that they were pretty closely connected to in Rome, the family of Vespasian and his sort of faction in the Roman elite, the Roman nobility. If you know how mafia families, elite families work, they intermarry amongst each other as a way of, making peace, working together, establishing their turf, and making sure they stay off each other's turf by these arranged marriages that tie the elite families together. And if you look at the history of our species, you will note that at least where we have a good record of it, the pattern is not one of one people completely conquering and eliminating another, but a pattern of assimilation and mixture. And the best way to conquer a people is not to enslave them and brutalize them, but to basically control them through their previous masters, kind of become the godfather of the godfathers. That's how elite families have worked behind the scenes to keep their bloodlines going, keep their story going, and especially when that story includes its idea of having been a chosen family at one time. And the Bible definitely talks a lot about chosen people. The Hebrews thought of themselves as the chosen people. And of the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Judah thought of themselves as particularly special. The tribe of Dan seemed to have a lot of adherents who thought of themselves as quite special. In fact, the tribe of Dan seems to be very closely linked to the Tuatha De Danu, the people of Danu, the goddess Danu, who were, at least mythologically, one of the original civilizations that flourished in the British Isles, particularly Ireland. There are interesting connections you will see all around if you dig into history enough. But let's stay on topic here. So my contention is that baptism is really one of the easier ways that you can have a near-death experience, a spiritual experience. And the original version of baptism that John the Baptist practiced was one of full immersion and nearly drowning, to the point where the person being baptized either, flailed around and gasped to get up, or they accepted the blessing and had a near-death experience. Now, you've heard my talks about near-death experiences. Near-death experiences can actually be real death experiences where the soul moves on. The body may remain alive, but it gets a new clone soul, an NPC soul, a virtual soul, a walk-in, they sometimes call it in New Age parlance. And those souls often come back with a mission. They come back born again. And if you've known any born-again Christians that really struck their stuff, you will know that they have this most unshakable faith in their belief and in their mission in life, whatever it is, whether it's to be an upstanding member of their community, of their church, whether it's to be a great father, whatever their ambition is, they pursue it with in almost a state of grace. And you can tell when somebody is in this mode versus somebody who's just using religion, using Christianity to get ahead. The people that really are believers have no real interest in making money. They don't want to become famous. They just want to do their work, their spiritual work. And this is basically confirmation that they are replacement souls. The soul original has died or been judged and moved on to another universe which is better suited to their nature, what they have done with their life so far. Lives so far, because they might have had a number of reincarnations up to the point where they were taken away. And the Christ story is absolutely one of souls being taken away. If you dig down underneath the various ways you could possibly interpret the preaching, the teaching of Jesus, you will see that he talked about kingdoms being prepared, many rooms in the kingdom. This is essentially describing the many universes in the multiverse, an expanding number of universes, each with their own creative leader, God, their own god or goddess, or if you don't like that term, call them angels and demons. different level angels, archangels, angels. This is the hierarchy of spiritual awareness, of consciousness. And as I've told you elsewhere, there are a number of levels to that. And most of humanity never gets past the fourth level of consciousness. This is a full awareness of physical reality. The fifth level of consciousness is where you have a full awareness of spiritual things. Most humans only have a brief glimpse of this higher level of awareness, this fifth level of awareness. And one of the tie-ins of Christianity to the New Age, Age of Aquarius preachings is an idea of entering the fifth dimension. Okay, this is the dimension of spiritual awareness, and the change that is coming with this apocalypse, this event, is a change to the species, where souls born into the human soul vehicle will not normally, as they currently do, they normally develop by default to a full awareness of the physical dimensions, time and space, this universe. In the future, after this event, all human incarnated souls will develop by default to a full awareness of the fifth level of consciousness, a spiritual awareness. Now, that doesn't mean they will know everything. That doesn't mean they will be gods. It means that they will be living adult lives that are not as beastly as the lives that most humans live today. When they reach adulthood, they will have some awareness of their spiritual purpose. They will have a spiritual ambition. Now, I've told you many times that spiritual ambitions can be anything. There are gods of toe cheese. There are gods of the Britney Spears fan club. You can be the god of anything that you want to focus on. And as long as you attract enough spiritual energy to your universe, you can run that universe any which way you want to. Even if you don't attract any souls and you have to use all NPC toy soldiers, once you become a god, you can run your own show. And a universe is a pretty good padded cell for a very dysfunctional soul, a very narcissistic soul, sociopathic, psychopathic soul. It's the perfect way to punish them without hurting them and giving them a chance to recover from their malady. This is the truth of the multiverse. This is why this all exists. This is why there are physical universes, why there are spiritual universes. So let's talk a little bit about other places where immersions have caused some interesting changes. Let's talk about the flood stories. Now, pretty much every tradition around the world talks about floods. It's a very common occurrence when global cataclysms occur. And depending on how big the cataclysm is, the flooding can be pretty much global. Flooding, or there's also, in other traditions, more in some places it's not a story of flooding so much as of what's the word I'm looking for? Having to avoid fallout. And you have a lot of cultures who have a recollection of needing to live underground for long periods of time. And so there are other stories that are kind of similar to the Noah story, only the gods tell the good guy to store up food in a cave and prepare to live underground. Different than the flood myth, but probably driven by the same sort of events. Now, interestingly enough, when a great flood occurs, that's going to baptize a lot of souls. And that can be an interesting time, because that soul, immersed in water and going through this near-death experience, probably has a different experience of near death than a soul that was, say, on their deathbed in a hospital or in a car wreck or doing something on land. That connection with the water is a very important one. All of mythical tradition, water is a very sacred, special substance. Every tradition talks about water being the source of things. In fact, the Sumerian tradition talks about two waters, the clean water and the salty water, the fresh and the salty water, as being kind of the two forces of nature that shape creation. And I think that's significant. What I believe happened in the flood times, and there have been more than one, but just the one that most people remember, that a series of floods actually that spelled the end of the Atlantean civilization. I believe that what happened were a lot of folks had near-death experiences, and their souls transmigrated in those experiences. Now, because we're in the middle of an experiment, they didn't transmigrate very far. In fact, if they woke up a bunch and knew more than they were allowed to share, their souls would have transmigrated somewhere where they couldn't communicate with the chosen species. They became fishes, they became rocks, they became stones, they became part of the earth, and carried on their missions kind of incognito. And that's been happening a long time. As this process of transmigration of souls has been fine-tuned, because it's different than it used to be. The Hindu understanding of reincarnation and karma is it happens only between lives, and you live out a whole life. You have to accept everything that happens to you in one life, then you reincarnate, have another life, and you have another life, and have another life, and they think of it as something of a punishment. Well, the way things work now, and what we've been testing for a long time with this species, is being able to transmigrate souls in the middle of an incarnation. Once they've made it clear whether they are well suited to the role that they've been cast in this simulation, this physical reality simulation that is known as the prime universe, where all of creation has been tested and proven in before it gets released. That's what's going on with the Gaia experiment. That's why this planet is here. That's why the previous planet that was destroyed in this solar system that was where the asteroid belt is, that's why that planet was destroyed. That was an earlier experiment that created actually the first humanoid chosen species of this big game. And it is kind of a game. It's a serious game. It's a game of souls. It is essentially the first game and will be the last game, because it is the game, evolving and continuing game that God started playing with his first children. And they taught to their children and their children's children. And the game got more and more fun as it got more and more rules, more and more pieces, more and more symbols that could represent things, more and more real. Quote, "This is all a simulation." That's not a bad thing. It's not like the Matrix. Yes, there are some universes that are kind of like the Matrix, where authoritarian dark gods try to control everything that the souls that they capture do and milk their spiritual energy for the greater good. And there are many people that would just love to be in a universe run by a god like that. And that's what they're going to get. They may not like what they get, but that's what they're going to get. Until they decide, you know what, that was kind of a stupid idea. I really liked having some freedom. I like not having everybody to tell me to be nice all the time. Don't do this, don't do that. I'd rather choose what I choose to do and accept the consequences. That's the way the more godly universes are run. At any rate, my conclusion is that baptism is a much misused spiritual technique. Treating baptism as just simply symbolic cleansing, washing away of sin, is kind of wrong-headed and not really getting to what baptism is really all about. It's having the faith in this new system to risk death for enlightenment, for a chance to go where you are most needed, where you will be more happy. And this is actually one of the things that scared the leaders of that time about Christianity. If you read up on early Christian communities, they didn't have a great fear of death. They were perfectly happy to be martyred for their faith. And they actually looked forward to death because that was going to be their chance to move on. And early Christians did believe that when they had accepted Christ, that was, and lived a Christian life, lived by the old, by the Ten Commandments and all the teachings of Jesus, that they would, when they died, go to what they considered heaven. Now, in fact, that does happen. That heaven may not be what you think it is. There's not just one heaven. There are many heavens for different ideas of what would be perfect. There are many kinds of messiahs. Many people have a near-death experience that inspires them in a direction that's not necessarily spiritual. It may set them on a path of wanting to be an artist or a musician, or be a healer, a doctor. whatever. It may inspire them to want to have a perfect family, inspire them to want to be a leader of their church, of their community. These are all spiritual missions. These are all Messiah missions. And when you get one, you've probably had a near-death experience and may not even have realized it. Especially if you can look back in your life or hear about your life from those close to you and have them say, you know what, you've changed so much. This time you were doing that, and then all of a sudden you just figured everything out and like you just blossomed. That's because you moved on and your clone who replaced you became tweaked a little bit to be more consistent, more functional in this universe. And this is why some people seem to just have everything come easy to them. Their life seems to flow because they fit here. And it's hard to fit here. Not every soul can do it. And some do it in dark ways because, if you have a plan that needs to have bad things happen in order for good things to result, you've got to have sinners. And there are many people who have moved on through a near-death experience, through a deep spiritual experience, that come back replaced by a non-player character, an NPC, that does some pretty dark things. And I think most of our world leadership right now are NPCs. They are programmed to be bastards like they're being. They are programmed to think great resets are wonderful things, that it would be a wonderful thing to get humanity to self-extinct, at least the mass of it, so that the survivors, which they hope to be able to pick and choose, will have an easy time in their world, their future. These are dark souls. These are souls that think like Hitler. These are souls that think like a Stalin, or a Chairman Mao, or Xi Jinping, or Vladimir Putin. Souls like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, George Soros. So I'm probably going to get in big trouble for saying some of these names. Elon Musk. All the World Economic Forum folks who think they know better than anybody else what's good for humanity, and they're going to force it down everybody's throat willy-nilly, even if it kills them, even if they know it's going to kill them. And truth is, death doesn't really matter that much. This is a simulation. Your soul is what's real. And to be honest, with what they've got in mind to finish up this apocalypse, I'd rather go sooner than later. And that's not saying I would commit suicide. I want to see how it ends up. But my life may not be as painful as many folks are having it right now. And I can tell you for absolute sure that it is not a sin to take your own life. It is a sin to rob another of their life because you don't know if they have not accomplished their mission, if you cut off their ability to achieve what they wanted to achieve in this incarnation, you have sinned against that other soul. Doesn't matter if it was well intentioned. Oh, we had to put them out of their misery. Bullshit. All of this new euthanasia crap coming out of Canada. I'm sorry, you're playing God. You're committing a sin. especially if you're promoting euthanasia services, promoting abortion services. That's not on God's team. I'm sorry. You are playing God. You are playing at being the kind of God that you would want to have, an all-powerful, almighty micromanager. And that's not God. That's the adversary. That's what Borg wants. That's what Borg is programmed to want, because creation needs an adversary. You need conflict. Conflict is what tests out ideas. And creation is about testing ideas and seeing what is a good idea, what's a bad idea, what is going to make time last longer, what is going to make souls have better paths, and what is going to make the interactions of souls more healthy and functional. That's what this game has been all about. It's a game of creating games that are more fun and have more different levels and worlds to play in. That's what the multiverse is all about. And there are very challenging universes where the most adept players of either creation or destruction play, and those would be the highest heavens, the lowest hells, and this perfect middle of the physical universe, the prime universe I like to call it, because there are many physical universes. There are many parallel universes. There are universes that basically have a different midpoint, a different starting point of their history, because there's always a chance that some god or goddess might come up with a version of the Roman Empire that worked out better in the long run than the one that we had. Maybe didn't have to have so many invasions, so much loss of knowledge, so much of a reset that happened in the Dark Ages. Yes, the Dark Ages was kind of a reset. And it was a purposeful reset. It was a reset that happened because this was what was needed for this new religion of Christianity to spread, and for a time de-emphasize the anti-religion of Platonic Aristotelian science. Now, that was not destroyed completely. There was good stuff to have. It just was moving in the wrong direction. It was causing people to be nihilistic, fatalistic, and not really engage in anything but hedonistic pursuits. What they accused the Epicureans of, although Epicurus was not anything like what the people that called themselves Epicureans were. Interesting thing to study, the conflict of Stoicism versus Epicureanism. At any rate, I would say that it would not be a bad idea to baptize yourself. This might be a good time to test yourself through baptism. You got a bathtub, that's an easy thing to do. Dunk your head under and see how long you can stand before you come out. See if you have a special experience. See just how much you trust in the universe, in God, in your beliefs. If you don't have enough trust to believe that you will survive dunking underwater for longer than you think you can stand, you don't have a very strong belief. do you? So I think that would be a good challenge for Christians. I don't know, maybe this will be the next big challenge on TikTok, to see if you can baptize yourself as thoroughly as the original John the Baptist probably did his followers, hoping to have more people wake up like the fisherman, the real Jesus. Maybe I was thinking about this, and there's an interesting cat in this whole Christian story, Peter, who is supposedly the first pope, the rock upon which the church will be built. He's referred to. Now, he was one of those fishermen, wasn't he? One of those fisherman brothers. Was always kind of painted as sort of the dumb apostle, the one who asked all the dumb questions, and Jesus had to correct him. I'm thinking that Peter cat might have actually been the one who had this miraculous near-death experience and came back with all the ideas that John the Baptist started preaching. And as I've told you, I think John the Baptist is the real spiritual Messiah of the time. But there was another Messiah that was the one that was really needed for the Jews, and that was Vespasian, the one who destroyed the Second Temple and basically intermarried with the Greco-Jewish Persian elites and tried to form a dynasty, the Flavian dynasty, and which I fully believe had planned to turn Christianity into this global religion that it became. That plan did not succeed initially, and that was all part of a deeper plan that gave this spiritual Christian tradition that John the Baptist had fostered a chance to spread, but using the mythology that the conquering Messiah, royal family bloodline Messiah, Vespasian, and his contacts in the East, to form the basis of this new religion that kind of got out of their control. And this is why, I'm repeating some of what I told you in another episode, but just in case you haven't seen that, Vespasian's granddaughter, I forget her name, but she is actually one of the first Christian saints. And the man she was married to, who was reputedly a kinsman, was one Clement, who very closely matches the first real known pope. So yes, they were planning on setting up a religion there, and it was upset by the fact that this dynasty did not take. They had wanted, in fact, Titus had wanted to marry Berenice, the daughter of Herod Agrippa, and make her the empress. And just as Caesar was not able to install Cleopatra as his empress and form a line through Caesarion, their child, that didn't work out for the Vespasian line either. The first son, Titus, was a pretty good emperor, but only lived about 10 years after his accession. And his younger brother, Domitian, was a lout like Nero and was assassinated. And that was the end of that dynasty. What's interesting, though, is that this end of the 12 Caesars, it's interesting that Vespasian's family are considered part of the 12 Caesars. And then the next bunch of them were, quote, the good emperors. Isn't that interesting? At any rate, I'm not going to talk in detail about how these bloodlines work, about how the Messiah pattern establishes generational chosen ones. I've talked about that in other episodes, so you can find that. I really just wanted to talk about baptism and leave you with the thought that taking a baptism might not be a bad thing. I actually did myself a couple of days ago in Bali. Not a place I'd recommend visiting. I wasn't too impressed with it. Many people think it's such a wonderfully spiritual and magical place. I frankly not very impressed. It was like, okay, this is like anywhere else in Indonesia with just a lot more people and a lot more fat cats with money running around. But anyway, I baptized myself in the Pacific Ocean and lived to tell the tale. I didn't take it too far because I've already had my spiritual awakening, but I did it to just kind of imagine what others might go through and what this real baptism might be like. And I definitely came away with the surety that it could be very like what I consider my major baptism. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I had my first real serious baptism when I was only 2 years old. I was out on a camping trip with my family, and I was crawling out on a log that was hanging over the Snake River, and I fell in, and I would have drowned. I probably did have a near-death experience there that I didn't really remember. But my brother saved me, and it's been back in my memory. That's the oldest memory I have, is the memory of crawling on this log and falling into the water. I don't even actually remember anything after that. How my brother came and saved me, what happened while I was in the water, completely blank. But I remember to the finest detail crawling out on this log and falling, and the feeling of falling into the water. The biggest baptism I had was, I think, the baptism of the 2-night ayahuasca ceremony that kind of unlocked the accelerated spiritual awakening I've had in the last 5 years. And I think that can be much like any other kind of a baptism. It's definitely taking a chance on an experience that you might regret having. You might not survive. I think many psychedelic trips are actually near-death experiences. And those who come back changed, born again, with some new mission, probably have been replaced, are NPCs at this point, and they've gone to some other universe that called to them in this altered state experience, called to them strongly enough that they said, okay, I'll go. Any rate, so I think baptism might be one of the best ways to see what you're made of spiritually. And the more I learn about the truth of Christianity, its basis in the work of John the Baptist and the tradition of prophets, the long line of prophets, sung and unsung, of God, I am amazed at this wonderful plan. And I'm so happy to be part of it, to be participating in one of its high points, if not the absolute high point. I mean, day 7 of creation has been the tough one, the toughest thing that all souls in the multiverse have gone through, and we're almost done with it. We're almost there. The fact that it's so painful is because we're almost there. The NPC souls that are replacing world leaders nowadays, they have their programmed mission to stress test all of the other souls that are still here, to push them to take action, to show what they're made of, to show, well, are you going to just lay down and let people walk all over you, let tyrants walk all over you, Let them tell you what to think, how to think, when to think it? Control every aspect of your life? Or are you going to stand up and be a martyr? Say, no, I'm not going along with this nonsense. No, you're telling me lies. And I'm going to tell the world the lies that I know about. I'm going to be a whistleblower. And yes, I may be martyred for that. And that's the kind of soul that God wants for the next day of creation. The kind who has enough faith to be a martyr. Not faith in one particular religion, one particular country, one particular ideology. Faith in their own goodness and their right to do what is right. Their right to free speech, to free thought. Freedom of action within the bounds of karma. And those souls are going to be the ones on the good ship future in this universe. And this next day of creation is going to need them. That good ship is going to be the USS Enterprise, the Star Trek of the future. Only I think the first ship is more likely to be called the Ark Royal, because that's what arks are all about. Arks are used to save people from catastrophes, to carry them on in hard times, and to carry them forward against the adversary. Arks are incredible things, and every soul's life is an ark that carries you from one incarnation to another, from one universe to another, one set of experiences to another, and you grow and learn, and you develop your own Merkaba, which is the ark of the soul. This is the real you. That you can't, maybe we can describe it mathematically. Maybe we will be able to model a Merkaba and be able to go to a Merkaba doctor and have them, do some mumbo jumbo equipment and tell you, oh, well, you see this Diblalak radiant on your Merkaba is extended too far. You need to focus on this for a while, and that will even that out in your Merkaba, and then you won't have to be sent to the universe that you seem to be heading for and you feel like you're starting to have dreams about, okay? Maybe we'll get to be that good doctors of the spirit. I hope so. I think we will. In fact, I'm almost sure that's where we're going. We have many more days of creation to get through before we're that advanced. Before every new soul that's born is going to get an experience so well tuned to learning and growing and becoming a model citizen of the multiverse that they don't have to go through reincarnation, incarnation after incarnation. They don't have to forget and remember and forget and remember and go through all the pain that we have right now. We're not there yet. That's a goal. To get to that goal, we've done the hardest part with day 7 of creation. We've made a version of karma that works almost perfectly. Now there's gonna be bug fixes and stuff as we encounter other species that we haven't met, other civilizations we haven't met, all sorts of challenges to face. And the adversary is going to be hanging on fiercely to every planet, every galaxy, every place that they hold. They want to keep a place in this universe because they still believe that their ideas of creation are better. And they still think that they can thwart God's plan. That's what they were programmed to think. Borg is a program. The adversary is a program designed to be an adversary. That's how God knows he's going to win in the end. That's why people of God who have real faith do not fear devils, demons, the minions of the adversary. We know we're going to win in the end. Yeah, we know there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering in the interim. And we'll die many times probably before we see our reward. But faith is about knowing that you're playing on the right team. Having faith in the souls that guide you. If you have them. I don't really have any guides. That's another thing that took me a while to process in my awakening, because I see so many people having similar experiences, but then talking about their guides doing this and doing that, and advising them and channeling information to them. And I thought, well, what's up with that? That's not anything like what happened for me. The only spiritual entities who have overtly worked in me or through me, there have been three. One was this regal light being version of a tall gray who spoke to me telepathically the first night of the ayahuasca ceremony. And he only said one thing. He says, "You've been given a great gift. Use it wisely." And then just kind of sent me on a journey of past life discovery. Another entity appeared to me just as I was waking up one morning. This regal brunette, middle-aged brunette, all dressed in white, with a big black spider on her cheek. And she just sat there and looked at me with kind of a haughty, disdainful look. And didn't even communicate anything to me, just kind of an emotion of, the emotion I got from her was like, okay, you won, you bastard. That's what I felt from her. The only other entity that's really worked in me was sort of a Loki kind of demonic force that would step in and kind of take over if I pushed in directions that I was not supposed to be pushing in as I experienced and processed my awakening. If I pushed too quick to share information, to write books, to start teaching or preaching, that's when I had my dark nights of the soul. And it's only now, 2023, about 5 years exactly after I started my awakening, I'm finally able to speak freely to anyone who'll listen, which is probably very few, because I've been pretty heavily shadow banned and canceled and attacked every which way but loose. Like this Twitter story today. I think I'm the only one who wasn't surprised by the new Twitter CEO, because while everybody else has been shouting, "Oh, Twitter's so wonderful now. It's back to the way it should be. We have free speech." I have been so harassed on Twitter, you wouldn't believe it. I rejoined shortly after Musk took it over, thinking, okay, well, everybody says it's going to get better. I'll give the guy a chance. And started posting and commenting. And it was, my content, I post and share a lot of things about what's really going on in China, because I think that's a very important piece of what's happening in the world, and a piece that many people are not aware of, or they're getting fake news, false news, propaganda news about. Well, these sources of truth about China are still being heavily suppressed and blocked on Twitter. Some things I would post, and it's interesting. I can post things from one device just fine, but if I posted from another device, it would just hang, or sometimes even the connection would go out. Other things, like I would make a comment on a prominent celebrity personage's tweet and be blocked from Twitter for 3 days to a week for absolutely nothing. I mean, yes, it was a post that was dismissive or contrary to what this personage was posting, what they were claiming. But I mean, that's free speech. I'm not a hateful person. I don't post hate. I don't threaten people. I do warn people. Maybe some people consider warnings a threat. And these days, I don't know. But anyway, so I wasn't surprised with what happened to Twitter today. And I won't be surprised if it becomes an even worse source of manipulation of voters in this voting cycle than it was in the last one. If we even get to another election, which, who knows? There's a lot going on in the world, and things that are beyond the control of those who think they're controlling things. So, like I say, it's going to be really fun to watch it all fall out. I don't know how it's going to end, but I know it's going to end. Everybody has their ending. Everybody dies, and they move on. Sometimes they move on before, as I've been talking to you about. So my advice is just enjoy the ride, but don't let anybody push you around and spoil the ride for you. Speak out, speak your mind, insist on your right to speech. Die for it if you need to, because it's that important. It's important to your soul. If you want to have a future where you have any freedom. Now, many of you would be perfectly fine living in a totalitarian dystopia with your device telling you what to think, how to think, when to think, and giving you furry little cat pictures to make your mood better. And maybe with a little device that shocks you when you're even thinking about saying something that's not nice to somebody. If you want to live in a milquetoast world like that, okay, go for it. You're probably exactly the kind of candidate they want for their heaven. That's not my idea of heaven, and that's not God's idea of heaven. That's not where you're going to go if you want to stay on God's team. God's team are fighters. They're people that have conviction, that stand for what they stand for. That doesn't mean that they're dogmatic, that they won't change their position. In fact, God's team are the kind of people who, if they find out they were wrong, they will bend over backwards to try to correct whatever their wrong thinking, whatever their bad ideas, any problems that they caused. They will make amends. They will apologize at least, say, I was wrong. There's a lot of good folks coming out now and doing that about who had been supportive of all the lies and cover-ups and deceptions of the plandemic. That might be a word that'll get me canceled, huh? And it's working. There's so many people coming out and telling the truth and saying, yeah, I was supporting this, but I was wrong. I misrepresented the truth. I carried a narrative that was wrong, that was harmful, that was a lie to the people, being told to them by people who had a stake to benefit from a pandemic. Profiteering. And this is what many corporations, this is what many states did. Countries They profiteered from the situation. They used it to print money, to get money that they didn't really need and weren't going to use for what it was allocated for. And if you know anything about how Washington works, that's pretty much how this dirty money machine works in Washington. They print money and give it to special interests. Yeah, they dollop out a little bit to the poor numby-gumbies who voted for them, so they think, yeah, I got mine. You know, throw some money at some people that have student loans that they can't pay, and they got degrees in bullshit subjects that nobody wants to hire them for. Yeah, that's a great voter block to suck in with suck up money. It's pretty cheap. They can't buy everybody, and they won't buy everybody, and that's why most of their effort is geared towards discrediting and demeaning and dehumanizing portions of humanity, making the ones who watch mainstream media perfectly okay with the idea of, well, let's wipe out these assholes. They're just a bunch of Trump supporters anyway. They're a danger to our country. They're domestic terrorists. We need to just round them all up and put them in a FEMA camp, or, hey, let's draft them and send them to Ukraine. This is the way these idiots think, and they are idiots, because in the long run, their plan can never succeed, and they will not have the nirvana that they think they're going to get with all their authoritarian plans. The World Economic Forum is being exposed for the sociopathic, psychopathic, mafia family criminals they are, and their buddies in the CCP behind the Great Firewall of China, who have been creating and testing all the sick surveillance, spying, virus, vaccine technology, bioweapons, infoweapons, etc. They've been testing that on the Chinese people. That's how much the CCP loves the Chinese. And they become so effective at it that their propaganda machine, oh, they're doing it for our own good. There's more useful idiots in that country than anywhere else in the world, but the U.S. is catching up fast. And if that's the way you want to live life, you know what? You deserve to be a beast. You have taken the mark of the beast. And your soul will be sent elsewhere, either during this life or at the end of it, however it ends. Your apocalypse is not going to be a happy one. You are going to go to a place that I promise you, you are going to come to think of as hell. It's going to be quite like The Matrix. That movie where you're in this horrible simulation that's constantly challenging you, constantly stressing you, constantly driving you to do things that are against your nature, driving you crazy. Because that's how you generate the most spiritual energy from a soul that you have captured. This is what hive minds do. And Borg is a hive mind. It's a planned hive mind that takes souls that need remedial work and puts in. So this is what you're going to get if you don't shape up. You don't get a free lunch in the spiritual world if you don't pull your weight, if you don't respect God and karma and try to do your best to do your duty to the souls around you, which everybody has an innate sense of what is right and what is wrong. what is good and what is evil. And most people find ways to rationalize doing evil. I know I've done it. Oh, I have to do this immoral, this unethical thing in my work because I've got to feed my family, I've got to keep my job, and if I said anything, they would fire me. And I don't know what I'd do if they fired me. How many of you had that conversation with yourself? I've had it so many times I can't count it. And it's very difficult. These decisions are not easy. We don't always make the right choice, but we can learn from it. We don't have to fight every battle, but you have to choose the important ones that you want to fight and draw a line somewhere. I've drawn my line, and my line is not going to be trespassed anymore. Somebody tries to shut me up, I'll find somewhere else to broadcast. I'll find somewhere else to preach. I'll go preach on the street. If they lock me up, I will preach to the people around me. That's what I did when I was in the mental institution, when they locked me up before. Yes, I've been in mental institutions. I would be amazed if anybody that had the kind of spiritual epiphanies I have had didn't spend time in a mental institution. And I think some of the most advanced, the most interesting souls I've encountered were in such institutions, put there by people who just couldn't understand what they were talking about, what they had experienced that was outside of this universe. And that's what a lot of people are in for. They are people who have woken up spiritually, at least to some extent, and have had experiences that they can't unsee, are still having experiences, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, because the spiritual world is full of souls just like you. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Some of them want to use you, some of them want to abuse you, some of them actually take a shine to you and want to help you, want to guide you. There's a wide range at all levels of consciousness of different personalities. And there are many personalities who will lie, cheat, and steal. They will tell you, oh, I'm Jesus. If you worship me, if you come to my universe, I will give you everything you want. You'll be forgiven of all your sins. No. Okay, the preachers with bad hair, that happens in the spiritual world too. That's how they recruit for Borg universes, for these hive mind universes where they use and abuse souls. And boy, the best recruiters are all of the love goddesses that are out there. If your philosophy is rooted in this completely absurd idea of unconditional love, oh, everything is love, God is love, love is all that's important, all you need is love. Okay, this may sound wonderful, but it's actually the most pervasive recruiting psyop in the spiritual world. It's bad shit. It all goes back to the dark lady who's been trying to destroy chosen species ever since there was a first chosen species. She was working to screw up God's plan, and that is Lucifer's sister Lilith, who was the queen, the leader of the first spiritual universe. Lucifer was the leader of the first physical universe. This is the Big Bang. The Big Bang is two universes. Lucifer's idea is, like God, to test, to make souls prove themselves, to challenge them, to tempt them, to show what they are really made of. This is not evil. This is not the devil. This is the devil's advocate, the one who makes you test yourself, who pressures you to show what you're really made of, not just virtue signaling. Oh, I'm a Christian, and I think we should give money to everybody, and I think the government should pay for everybody's education, and I think the government should pay for everybody's health care, and I think the government should do this and the government should do that, and we should have no taxes. I mean, this is really dumb. This is how a lot of these pure love, New Agers, Christ consciousnessers, Tesla worshipers think. They think that you can have it all. How many times have you heard that? I mean, that's why women are so susceptible to this bullshit, because they like this idea. We can have it all. I can have a family, and I can have a career, and I can have all the stuff I want from Amazon, and I can be in the latest new fashions, and I can have it all. Only it doesn't bring you any happiness, does it? You can't do it all. You become a frustrated parent, you become a frustrated worker, you become a frustrated lady that's getting old and saggy and is no longer attractive to men. Maybe even young and saggy and not attractive to men, because men don't like fat women. Most men, there are some that are attracted to fat, most aren't. Men don't like nasty, abrasive, insulting women. Some do. Some like to be whipped a little bit. I kind of enjoy it a little bit. I get tired of it once in a while. But it sort of keeps me, it tests me. And I know that I need to be tested. That's the whole point of creation. That's the whole point of spiritual evolution. If you're never tested, you're never going to know what you're made of. You're never going to know what you're capable of, for either better or worse. And the person that puts off testing, if you're the parent that wants to shield the child from everything and thinks that they can just download everything that they need to know into them without letting them experience it firsthand, this kind of helicopter parent, I'm sorry, you're going to have a child that grows up and is not going to be well tested and is going to go off the rails the moment that they're out from under your smothering clutches. I'm sorry, this unconditional love parenting is bullshit. Unconditional love anything is bullshit. I don't mind saying it. And if that offends you, that bothers you, tough. I don't care. Don't watch me. Get me canceled. I'm not going to stop telling the truth. And I absolutely know this is the truth. And I will argue with anyone, debate anyone, challenge anyone to demonstrate the untruth of anything I say. And I will absolutely retract, apologize for whatever thing that I can be proved wrong in. I've done that many times in my life. I've been all across the political spectrum. I've been all across the ideological spectrum. I've lived in many different countries. I've participated in many different religions and anti-religions. I've been there, and I come back. And you're getting the benefit on my channel of a person that is probably more well-rounded than any person you are ever liable to meet. At least in certain ways. There are a lot of things I know absolutely nothing about. I couldn't name 5 rap artists. I can name a few of the current popular singers. I can't name any of the most popular shows or series that everybody's talking about. I have absolutely no interest in that crap. And I actually lost interest in it when I went through my actor phase, which was from about age 40 to, would have been about 58-ish. that was my life. And when I started acting, I started becoming more critical of acting and more critical of scripts and their spiritual and political messaging. This was a part of my awakening, a part of my self-programming, if you will, that my messages here wouldn't have any meaning without. It's a core piece. Just like my study in physics, my deep interest in history, comparative religions, mythology, fairy tales. All the things I talk about here are somehow coming together into a messaging that I know is a better truth than you've gotten from any religion, any guru, any teacher you've ever had before. This is truth. It's not happy little lies that are going to make you feel good for a couple of days, maybe a few weeks or a year, and then collapse on you. That's what most other spiritual content on the internet is selling you. And it's a sales job. They need subscriptions. They need revenue. They need sponsors. That's why they exist, not to help you. That is a lie that they tell themselves, a virtue signaling lie. They will change their messaging to attract more people. If that is the kind of faith you have no faith at all, except in your ability to flim-flam your way through life and become materially successful. Anyway, I've talked too much. I hope you enjoyed this one. Like, share, subscribe, interact in any way. Love to have discussions, even arguments. I would prefer to have arguments that are productive and not just what passes for an argument on these days on social media, which is basically just yelling at each other and calling each other names. But at any rate, it's been fun. Tune in next time. I think we'll be talking about interesting fairy tale connection with very deep spiritual content. The story of Sleeping Beauty. So tune in next time. Till then, this is Rob Trump with the Omnist Hour. Happy Karma.